everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made my mini journal with this rice-a-roni box. First thing is we need to take the rice-a-roni box apart. There's several ways you can do this, but you really want to make sure that you save the integrity of the box. So I'm just using the little bone folder that I had on my desk here to help pry this side away. And then you've got to take the bottom apart as well. You want to be careful and not rip the sides. And you'll see once I get it open here. You've got the two sides and then you've got the spine there in the middle. And you just want to cut off all the edges. So I'm going to get my trimmer. That way I make sure and get the line straight. And you can use any size box. You don't have to use a rice-a-roni box. I've used macaroni and cheese boxes before. Just any box that is the size that you want your journal to be. You can do this way. You might have to use scissors to cut the flaps off or whatever, but if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I have a problem cutting straight, even if I'm using my trimmer. So scissors are definitely out of the question for me. And sometimes the video is going to go a little bit slow, but it's because I wanted to show pretty much from start to finish the process. I will be speeding up through different things though, because you know, once I do part of it, it's pretty self-explanatory the rest. So, but I'm about to be finished cutting these flaps off, and then once you get the flaps cut off, you'll see that it's basically a journal cover. So boxes are really fun and easy to use when you're doing journals. And you know, I always say I like to have a little bit of junk in whatever I'm making, so here's the junk. Rice-a-roni box. There you go. I'm going to peel this off because it's a little rough. You don't want to feel that under the paper. So we're going to go ahead and peel that off now. Get that all sorted so it won't be bumpy when we put our paper on there. And these papers that I'm using, I've got some from a couple different sets, and I'll list them in the description below which papers I'm using. For the most part, some of them are just scraps, and some of them I have no idea where they came from, but the ones definitely that I'm using for the cover, I know where I got them from, so I'll put the link in the description below in case you want to use the same ones. But you definitely don't have to. You can use any papers you want at all. So what I'm doing now is I want to figure out where I want the placement of my box, because I want the owl to be on the front cover. So you want to have about a ½ inch to an inch overhang all the way around the edges of your box, so that way you have something to fold over. Now, because I'm using the owl, I don't have a whole lot of fold over room on that side by the owl, but I make it work. And trying to pick this paper up is just crazy. But anyway, how I do mine is I fold it with my bone folder. I just push it up against the edges, so that way I know where it needs to be folded. You can measure these, and I'm not giving you the measurements that I'm using. Well, first off, because I'm not measuring traditionally, I'm actually using the shape of the box. But depending on what size box you use, your measurements are going to be different. And also, depending on where on the paper you place it, it could be different. Now, if you have just something that just has the same pattern all over and it doesn't matter, then you can just measure it from the corner. But remember, leaving at least a ½ inch all the way around the edges, so that way when you fold the paper over, you have plenty of room to glue and it covers nicely. It covers the edge of the box nicely. So again, I'm just using my bone folder to push that up to fold it. I'm using thicker paper here. It's not a true cardstock, but it's a little bit thicker than just regular copy paper. So as you can tell by the way it's sort of standing up like that when I fold it. And I'm sure that there's an easier, more efficient way to do this, but this is just the way I do mine. I might be making it harder than it needs to be, but this is what works for me. So you get it all folded, and then you turn it over to make sure that it's positioned where you want it, and it looks pretty good. So then I would fold it over, and then fold that side. I'm going to flip it again to make sure that I don't have my owl all crazy, and it's where it needs to be. Now, normally I wouldn't draw these lines that I'm going to draw on here, but after I get this nice and crisp, these folds, then you'll see the lines I'm going to draw. It's just so you can see the corners better, because it's difficult to see just where I folded it. And I went ahead and printed on the back of this paper too. It's got a design, because I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to use it, but obviously you're not going to see this. But what I'm doing is drawing the lines there so you can see the corners a little bit better, where the two folds intersect. Because what we want to do is cut the corners off at an angle, so when we fold them around the corners of the box, we don't have a lot of bulk there. So I'm just making these lines a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, when you cut your angles, you don't cut completely up to the corner. You leave just a smidgen away from the corner, because you don't want to have a hole there when you fold this. So you leave just, I don't know, I would say maybe a 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. It's not very much at all. And I could have cut this longer part off shorter to make it match the other ones, but it doesn't matter. It's going to get covered up by paper, so you're not going to see that anyway. So then you just put the box on your paper and go ahead and do a dry fit to make sure that it's all the way that you want it to be. And you can see how easy those corners fold since we cut that extra paper off. And if you've never done this before, I recommend getting just a plain piece of paper, scrap piece of paper or whatever, and doing it before you actually use your paper that you're going to cover it with. Now you'll see me with my bone folder in the corners poking the little piece of paper, the little corner that may or may not be sticking off. I'll poke it in, and I'll show you that again in a minute. Now what I'm getting ready to do is use my ATG, it's adhesive tape gun, it's just like a humongous tape roller. And I like to use that when I'm sticking paper on something, a large surface like this, as opposed to wet glue, because wet glue can warp the paper sometimes. I'm using a thicker paper, so I don't generally have that problem. But it's easier for me to use this. If you don't have this, you don't have to. And as you can see right here, I've run out of tape on this roll. So, I'm like, okay, I have more, but I'm not going to worry about refilling it right now. So I got this other stuff they call score tape. And after I get this stuck down, I'm going to get the score tape out and try to use it and see how that works. The one thing about the ATG is once it touches, it sticks. So I want to make sure that I have it exactly lined up before I start pushing it down, because it's going nowhere once it gets stuck on there. So getting it all smooshed down, and I'm like, should I use? No, I'm going to try the score tape. So you're going to see several different kinds of adhesives being used on here. And the score tape is actually, I'm sure it works great. I have problems getting the the stickers that's on the back of the score tape. I have a problem getting it off. Got my score tape. It's not the actual score tape brand. This is scrapbook.com brand. Double-sided adhesive roll, which I thought it worked great, except I did have a problem getting the adhesive, the little strip to pull it off. But that's user error, which most things are with me. There's nothing wrong with the tape whatsoever. And I figured since I ran out of my ATG, I would show you this. This being the first time I've used it, so it looks like it's a little awkward because I don't really know what I'm doing. So the bottom of it, when you unroll it off the roll, the bottom is sticky, obviously, and then you can just tear it, which is cool. And I'm going to go ahead and put 2 strips on here because I don't want this paper going anywhere, and it won't. I probably could have got away with just using 1 strip. And here I am trying to be all fancy and tear it at an angle. But I do eventually get the little strip off, and then I just fold it over. Again, using my bone folder to make sure I get a nice tight fold there against the edge. And this tape is really, really sticky, so it just stayed really, really great. I do like it. It's just I'll need to work with it some more to become more comfortable with it. But I just wanted to show you what different options you have for using adhesive when you're covering a journal like this. Obviously, this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's just the things that I had on hand, so I thought I would just show a little bit of that. This is all new to me, so I guess really I'm thinking pretty highly of myself doing tutorials, because a lot of times I'm not really too sure about what I'm doing, but why not? Then just fold this over. Get the bone folder and make sure and press that down good. Now you can see I've got a little bit of paper poking out, so I just use the end of my bone folder and just push that little point in there. And then when I fold it over, it keeps that corner covered and there's nothing sticking out. And also, forget all this showing you all these different adhesives. Come on with my art glitter glue. So I make sure that I put a line really close to that fold. And I could have trimmed this flap down. I didn't need to have it that big, but I figured why, it doesn't matter because it's going to be covered with other paper. And this is a really easy way to get a fold, is to just use your surface and do it like that. One more side to go, and then we've got the outside covered. You don't have to use art glitter glue. I like using it because it dries quick, and I'm all about impatience. Now, if you're not using a thicker paper like I am, you do need to be a little bit careful about warping your paper. And we're going to fold this over. But even if the glue I used right here on these flaps, even if it did warp my paper, again, this paper is going to be covered, so it really doesn't matter. And then so there, we've got it done. You just need to uh, make your folds along the same fold that's in the box, burnish it down, and with the thicker paper, it's not too thick, so you don't have to worry about it cracking, but it's not too thin either, so you don't have to worry about it ripping. Just make sure that you get your sides straight when you're doing this, when you're burnishing that fold. But there we go, we've got our outside cover done. I do like this paper. So now we just have to do the inside. Now I did the outside in a single sheet because I think it really reinforces it and makes it stronger. But on the inside, I'm not going to do it as a single sheet because you'll find if you try to do it that way and when you go to close the journal cover, it's just too bulky, it's too much, there's too much paper on those seams and it doesn't fold properly. So I'm actually going to cut this. And again, I'm using a directional patterned paper, and I want to have those mushrooms on the inside of my cover. And I'm measuring this. You can measure it and then just cut the part that you need. But I end up not even using the measurements, which is good because, like I say, if you're using a different size box than what I have, the measurements aren't going to do you any good anyway. So since I wanted to have the mushroom on there, what I end up doing is just not even measuring it. I just lay it on there and then make a mark and cut it. But you definitely want to make sure that you're not covering the fold, the seam. So I need it to be that wide. And then I almost made a mistake. And I want to make sure that I get the mushrooms. So I don't want that part, I want the mushrooms. So I'm going to start from up there and make my mark down here. And then I could just cut that little piece out. I need to make darker lines when I make my marks, because inevitably I make my marks and I can't find them. All right, let's test this one out and see if it fits. Get rid of this. I'm such a messy crafter. And I didn't cut it short enough. I don't know what was going on there, but I'd rather have it too long than too short any day, because I can always just trim that. But it fits good up against the fold. It's not going over the fold. And I want to leave just a little bit of edge around, a little bit of a frame for the paper underneath. So I just need to trim this off a little bit. And I like this paper because even though it's naturey and outdoorsy and mushroomy, it also has pink. And since I have a lot of avocado dyed paper, which is pink, that I want to use, it just makes it perfect. So I'm going to put some glue on this and get this bad boy put down. Again, you can see that I printed on the back of this paper because I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for. It just makes it a lot easier if I already print either coffee dye, tea dye, or in this case, some ledger paper. Looks like if I print it on the back, that if I decide to use it for something that I need double-sided, or if I make a tag or a journal card, it's not stark white on the back. So again, very important to not cover the fold when you're putting your paper pieces down. And that's the easiest way that I've found to make sure you don't do that is to fold it up. And then you don't have to worry about it going over the fold. Just burnish that down. And see, you can't even see the edges of the paper that folded over. So it doesn't matter that the one piece is a different size, but you're not going to see it. Now, let's see. I think I want to have the bird. But I know the whole thing's not going to fit. But enough of it fits that it'll be fine. And then I'm just going to make my marks again, leaving a little bit of edge all the way around, not going over my fold. And again, I'm not giving the measurements because the measurements are going to be different. Even if you're using the same rice-a-roni box, depending on how you cut the edges, it's possible that it could be different than mine. So that's why I didn't give any measurements, and I'm not even really using a ruler. I'm just going by marks. I'm checking to see because the tail, I'm just going to lose part of the tail on the bird. That's all there is to it. So then I just got to trim this down to size. And I'm saving these scraps because I'll definitely use them for something. If nothing else, I see another masterboard in my future, and there goes the tail. But that's enough. That's enough. This bird's not going to be flying anymore anyway. Then we just got to get her lined up there. And what I do is I line it up. You can either line it up at the top of this piece on the front or the bottom, but they do kind of need to be lined up. They just makes them look better. So now we're going to get this glued down. I didn't put any ink on any of this paper. You can if you want, that look, which is unusual because that usually is the look I want. But I didn't do it on this. This paper is really busy, which I like. I love using busy paper because then I don't have to do a whole lot of embellishing, which I do struggle with embellishing. I'm getting better, but it's not my favorite thing to do. So I really like colorful and busy papers because then you don't really have as much to do. So I've got them lined up down there. That looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and burnish this down. Then all I have left to do is the spine area. Now you won't see a whole lot of that, but you will see it sometimes. So I want to make sure I make it look pretty. Get rid of my marks over here. One over here as well. So I'm just checking to make sure that I didn't go over my folds. Now down here at the bottom of this, I am getting a little paper bunching, but you're not going to see it. If you're looking for it, you'll see it. But, I do the old let's beat it into submission thing and works just fine. And then I decide, you know what? I'm putting the tail back on the bird. You're probably not going to see it, but just in case, look at there. So again, making my marks to measure, making sure that I don't go over the seams. But if you butt it up just close enough, you still have that easy folding when you're opening and closing the journal, but you don't have big gaps where you're going to see the cardboard. If you're concerned about that, you can always put some ink on the cardboard and then ink around the edge of the paper as well. But as you can see, there's really not much gap there at all, just enough so that it's going to fold easily. And then we just have to glue this on there. Then you could put pockets on the inside of your journal covers, which I usually do, but because glue, but because I've got the bird and the mushrooms, and I don't want to cover those up, I decide not to put pockets. But that's the good thing about making your own journal is you can have it however you want it. Now, because I've used that tail, I just really have to make sure I get it lined up good. Even though you're not going to see it, you might, and I just want to make sure that it's right. There we go. As usual, I get glue on everything. So we get that burnished down, do our folds again, and we are finished with the cover of this journal. I'm quite pleased with the way it turned out. Still got that little problem down there with that folding paper, but you'll see when we get it finished that you won't even notice that. So look at there, I like that. I like it a lot. So I hope that that was somewhat easy to follow. And I'm just going to let it sit here and I will be back with part number 2. Thanks for watching.